Some loves are celebrated, some loves change history, and some loves must remain hidden forever. In 12th century France, two people met in the shadows of a monastery. Their love was forbidden by every rule of society. Their affair would scandalize a kingdom, and their story would become the most tragic romance ever written. This is not Romeo and Juliet. This is real. This is darker, and every word of it is true. This is the story of Héloïse and Abélard, the philosopher and his brilliant student, whose secret love led to betrayal, mutilation, and a lifetime of longing that death itself could not end. The City of Scholars. Paris, 1115. The city is alive with ideas, debates, and the pursuit of knowledge. The University of Paris draws scholars from across Europe, and among them stands one man who outshines all others, Pierre Abélard. At 36 years old, he's the most celebrated philosopher in France. Students flood his lectures. Nobles seek his wisdom. His intellect is legendary, sharp, rebellious, and unmatched. But Abélard has a flaw: pride. He knows he's brilliant, and he makes sure everyone else knows it too. He's made enemies among rival philosophers. He's challenged the church, and he's always certain he's the smartest person in any room. Until he meets her, the girl who could match him. Héloïse d'Arganchet is 17 years old, but don't let her age deceive you. She's a prodigy. While other women of her time are being prepared for marriage, Héloïse reads Latin, Greek, and Hebrew. She studies philosophy, theology, and literature. Her mind is as sharp as any scholar's in Paris. She lives with her uncle, Fulbert, a canon at Notre Dame Cathedral. Fulbert is immensely proud of his niece's intellect and wants her to have the education most women are denied. So he makes a decision that will destroy 3 lives. He hires Pierre Abélard to be Héloïse's private tutor. The arrangement. Abélard accepts eagerly, but not for the reasons Fulbert imagines. In his own later writings, Abélard admits the truth with disturbing honesty. He saw Héloïse's beauty and intelligence, and he wanted her. The arrangement is perfect for his purposes. He'll live in Fulbert's house, he'll have private access to Héloïse, he'll teach her during the day, and no one will question why they spend hours alone together. Fulbert trusts him completely. After all, Abélard is a respected scholar, a man of learning. What could possibly go wrong? The lessons begin. At first, they truly study. Abélard teaches Héloïse philosophy, Plato, Aristotle, the early church fathers. But Héloïse doesn't just absorb the lessons. She challenges him. She debates him. She matches his arguments with her own. For perhaps the first time in his life, Abélard has found an intellectual equal, and something dangerous begins to grow between them. In his autobiography, written years later, Abélard describes what happened next. Under the pretext of study, we gave ourselves wholly to love. The lessons provided the secret opportunities that love desired. The books remained open, but they were no longer reading them. Love in the shadows. Their affair becomes all-consuming. Abélard later admits he can barely concentrate on his public lectures anymore. His mind is always on Héloïse. His celebrated debates suffer. Other scholars notice his distraction, but don't understand the cause. Meanwhile, Héloïse falls completely, devastatingly in love. This isn't a teenage infatuation. Her letters, which survive to this day, reveal a love so intense, so absolute, that it borders on worship. She writes that she would rather be Abélard's mistress than the empress of the world. They write love songs to each other. Abélard composes poems celebrating Héloïse's beauty and brilliance. These songs spread through Paris, sung in taverns and streets. Everyone hears them, but no one knows they're about Fulbert's niece. No one knows the philosophy teacher and his student are meeting in secret every night. No one knows in a house meant for learning, they're conducting the most forbidden of affairs. For months, they believe they're safe. They believe their secret is kept. They believe love will find a way. They're wrong on all counts. Discovery. Fulbert begins to notice. His niece seems different, distracted, secretive. The servants whisper. And then one night, he sees them together. The sources don't record exactly what he witnessed, but we know the result. Fulbert is enraged. The man he trusted, the scholar he invited into his home, had seduced his niece. The dishonor is absolute. But here's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Abelard does something shocking for a medieval philosopher. He offers to marry Eloise. This is no small gesture. Marriage would destroy Abelard's career. The church expects his scholars to be celibate. Marriage means the end of his academic position, his influence, his reputation. But Abelard is in love, and he's willing to sacrifice everything. There's just one problem. Eloise says no. The refusal. In one of the most fascinating letters in medieval literature, Eloise argues against their marriage. Her reasoning is extraordinary for her time, or any time. She argues that marriage would ruin Abelard's career, and she couldn't bear to be the cause of his downfall. She argues that philosophers shouldn't be bound by domestic duties. She even quotes classical philosophy to prove that great thinkers need freedom, not wives. Most shockingly, she argues that she would rather be called his whore than his wife, because freely chosen love is worth more than any legal bond. Medieval scholars still debate her true motives. Was this genuine philosophy, or was she protecting herself emotionally, fearing he proposed only from obligation? We'll never know for certain, but the pregnancy makes the decision for them. The secret marriage. Eloise is pregnant. Medieval society leaves them no choice now. They must marry, but they agree to keep it secret to protect Abelard's career. They marry at dawn in a small church with only a few witnesses. Then they separate. Eloise goes to stay with Abelard's sister in Brittany, where she gives birth to a son they name Astrolabe, named for the astronomical instrument, a testament to their scholarly love. Fulbert, meanwhile, is not satisfied with a secret marriage. He's been dishonored publicly, and he wants everyone to know his niece is an honest wife, not a seduced woman. He begins telling people about the marriage. Abelard panics. If word spreads, his career is finished. So he makes a desperate decision. He convinces Eloise to take her final vows as a nun, hiding her away in a convent called Argenteuil. To Fulbert, this looks like Abelard disposing of his niece, hiding her away to escape his responsibilities. To Fulbert, this is the final insult. And Fulbert decides for revenge. The Night of Horror. The exact date is unknown, sometime in 1118. Abelard is asleep in his lodgings in Paris. Fulbert has hired men. They've been paid well for what they're about to do. They break into Abelard's room in the dead of night. What happens next is so brutal, medieval chroniclers struggle to describe it. Fulbert's men hold Abelard down, and then, as punishment for seducing Eloise, they castrate him. The attack is meant to humiliate, to destroy, to ensure Abelard can never touch another woman again. In medieval society, this is the ultimate emasculation, a public symbol of shame that everyone will know about. Abelard later writes, "It was the part of my body with which I committed the wrong that they punished." The aftermath. When morning comes, all of Paris knows the most celebrated philosopher in France has been mutilated like a common criminal. The scandal is explosive. Fulbert's hired attackers are caught and punished. They're castrated and blinded according to medieval law. Fulbert himself is stripped of his church position and his property confiscated. But this justice means nothing to Abelard. His shame is unbearable. He writes that he wanted to die. The physical pain is terrible, but the humiliation is worse. How can he face his students? How can he continue his lectures? Everyone knows what happened. Everyone knows why. In his despair, Abelard makes a decision. He'll become a monk. He'll retreat from the world entirely, hide himself away in a monastery called Saint-Denis. If society has unmanned him, he'll remove himself from society. And he insists that Héloïse take her final vows as a nun. Héloïse's sacrifice. Imagine Héloïse's position. She's 17 years old. She's a mother to a young son. She's married, secretly but still married, to the man she loves more than life itself. And now that man is telling her to lock herself away in a convent forever. She doesn't want to be a nun. Years later, in her letters, she admits she had no religious calling. She took the vows only because Abelard commanded it. She did it out of love, or perhaps out of a desperate hope that if she proved her devotion by becoming a nun, he might someday come back to her. At her final vow ceremony, witnesses report that she was weeping, but she took the vows. And with those vows, the door closed on any future they might have had. They were both locked away now, he in his monastery, she in her convent, separated by rules, by walls, by the church itself. The affair was over. The love story should have ended, but it was only beginning its strangest chapter. The years of silence. For 10 years, they don't communicate. 10 years of silence. Abelard buries himself in his work, writing theology and philosophy. He becomes abbot of a monastery, though he never recovers his former glory. The scandal follows him everywhere. Héloïse rises to become prioress of her convent. She's respected for her intelligence and administration. But inside, she's frozen in time, still the 17-year-old girl who fell in love with her teacher. Then, in 1132, something happens that changes everything. Abelard writes an autobiography called Historia Calamitatum, the story of my misfortunes. It's meant to comfort a friend by showing that Abelard's sufferings have been greater. In this text, Abelard tells the entire story, their affair, their secret marriage, the mutilation, everything. He describes Héloïse, but in cold, distant terms. He writes about their love as if it were a sinful mistake of youth, now repented. A copy of this letter somehow reaches Héloïse, and after 10 years of silence, she writes back. Héloïse's letter is like a scream that's been held in for a decade. It's passionate, angry, heartbroken, and brutally honest. She writes, "You know, beloved, as the whole world knows how much I have lost in you. Everyone knows the circumstances of that most shameful betrayal and how I was made wretched beyond all wretched women." But she doesn't stop there. She confesses something shocking. Even after 10 years as a nun, she doesn't love God. She loves Abelard. Even during Mass, even during prayers, her mind is filled with memories of him. She writes, "The pleasures of lovers which we shared have been too sweet. They cannot displease me, and can scarcely be banished from my thoughts. Even during the celebration of the Mass, when our prayers should be purer, obscene visions of those pleasures take such a hold upon my unhappy soul that my thoughts are on their wantonness instead of on prayers." This is extraordinary. A prioress, a high-ranking nun, is confessing that she's still consumed by sexual memories of her former lover. She's confessing that her religious devotion is a lie. She writes, "I would rather be your whore than God's bride." Abelard writes back, but his response is devastating. He addresses her not as my love or even Héloïse, but as my sister in Christ. He urges her to forget their earthly love and focus on spiritual matters. He essentially tells her to get over it. He writes that their affair was lust, not love, that it was sin, now forgiven by God, that she should be grateful they're both in religious life where they can serve God. To modern readers, Abelard sounds cruel, even heartless, but medieval scholars debate. Is he genuinely religious now, his passion burned away by suffering? Or is he protecting himself, refusing to acknowledge feelings that could destroy him all over again? We'll never know, but we know this: Héloïse writes back again and again,
and their correspondence continues for years. The letters that follow are complex. Gradually, under Abelard's relentless religious pressure, Heloise's tone changes. She begins writing more about theological matters, less about personal feelings. She asks him questions about running her convent, about interpreting scripture. Some scholars see this as Heloise surrendering, finally accepting that their romantic love is dead. Others see it as Heloise learning to speak Abelard's language, using religious discussion as a coded way to maintain connection with the only man she ever loved. Their letters become less personal, more intellectual. They debate theology. They discuss monastery rules. On the surface, they look exactly like what they should be, communications between a monk and a nun about religious matters. But underneath every theological discussion, you can feel it, the ghost of that passionate 17-year-old girl still trying to reach the man she loves, still trying to make him see her, still trying to matter to him. The final years. Abelard continues writing philosophy and theology, though controversy follows him everywhere. The church accuses him of heresy multiple times. His ideas are too bold, too questioning. In 1140, he's officially condemned by the church. He's old now, sick and tired. He retires to a monastery at Cluny, where the abbot treats him kindly. And there, on April 21st, 1942, at age 63, Pierre Abelard dies. According to his wishes, his body is sent to Heloise. Heloise's last years. Heloise lives for another 22 years. 22 years of heading her convent, of prayer and administration and duty. She becomes one of the most respected abbesses in France, known for her wisdom and learning. But in all those years, in all her letters to other scholars and church officials, she never mentions marrying again. She never speaks of any other love. She remains in her heart, Abelard's wife. When she dies in 1164, at about 63 years old, she's buried next to Abelard. According to legend, though this is probably apocryphal, when her coffin was placed beside his, Abelard's skeleton reached out its arms to embrace her. It's almost certainly not true, but the fact that people wanted it to be true tells you everything about how their story captured the imagination. The letters survived. Here's what is true. Their letters survived. In an age when most correspondence was lost, destroyed, or simply thrown away, someone preserved their letters. Someone recognized that these documents, this raw, honest, heartbreaking correspondence between two brilliant minds, was worth saving. And because those letters survived, we know their story. We know that Heloise loved with absolute devotion. We know that Abelard loved too, although perhaps not with the same intensity, or perhaps he simply couldn't admit it. We know that their love was real, complicated, problematic, and utterly human. What their story means. The story of Heloise and Abelard raises questions that still haunt us today. Can intellectual equals truly love each other, or does brilliance create its own barriers? Was Abelard's love genuine, or did he groom a young student? Medieval audiences saw him as a tragic romantic hero. Modern audiences often see a predatory older man. The truth probably lies somewhere in between, complicated by the vast differences in how medieval society viewed age gaps and power dynamics. Was Heloise's love devotion, or was it obsession? She refused to let go for decades. Was that romantic loyalty, or was it an inability to move forward? We don't have easy answers. Perhaps that's why their story has lasted 900 years. What happened to their graves? For centuries, pilgrims visited their graves. In 1497, their remains were moved to a new tomb. In 1792, during the French Revolution, their remains were moved again. And finally, in 1817, they were moved to Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, where they remain today. Their tomb has become a pilgrimage site for lovers. People leave letters, roses, and tokens. They touch the stone and make wishes about love. Even in death, Heloise and Abelard have become symbols of passionate love, of forbidden desire, of intellectual partnership. How they changed literature. Their letters became some of the most influential documents in medieval literature. They inspired poems, plays, and novels. Alexander Pope wrote a famous poem based on their story. Jean-Jacques Rousseau referenced them. Even today, scholars study their correspondence as examples of medieval philosophy, theology, and yes, love. They changed how we think about romantic love. Before Abelard and Heloise, most love poetry was about courtly love, stylized, idealized, and often unconsummated. But Abelard and Heloise wrote about real, physical, messy, complicated love. They wrote about desire, regret, longing, and loss. They made it acceptable to write honestly about love, not as an ideal, but as a lived experience, with all its joy and pain. The question that remains. Here's what we're left with. Did Abelard truly stop loving Heloise? Or did he just bury that love so deep beneath layers of theology and religious devotion that even he couldn't reach it anymore? In his final years at Cluny, did he ever think about Heloise? Did he ever regret the coldness of his letters? When he was dying, did he remember those early days when they sat together over philosophy texts, when intellectual debate turned to kissing, when the most brilliant philosopher in France fell completely in love with her 17-year-old student? We'll never know. The past keeps its secrets, but we have their letters, we have their words, and we have their tomb, where they lie together at last, separated by stone and time.
They loved in secret, they suffered in public, they died apart. But history wouldn't let them go, and 900 years later, we're still telling their story. This is what forbidden love looks like when you strip away the romance novels and the Hollywood endings. It's complicated, it's messy, it involves power imbalances, questionable decisions, genuine passion, terrible consequences, and lifelong regret. Eloise and Abelard loved each other, that much is certain. But their love didn't conquer all. It didn't overcome society. It didn't even overcome themselves. Instead, their love became something else, a story, a legend, a reminder that passion is powerful but rarely simple, and that the greatest loves aren't always the happiest ones. Their tomb in Père Lachaise Cemetery remains one of the most visited graves in Paris. Lovers leave flowers there, touch the stone, make wishes. They want to believe that somehow, in death, Eloise and Abelard found the happiness that eluded them in life. Maybe they did. Or maybe the real ending is simpler and sadder. Two brilliant people who loved each other, hurt each other, and spent the rest of their lives trying to figure out what went wrong. This is Echoes of Forbidden Love, where we tell the dark romance stories that history tried to forget. If you want more stories like this, more love that was forbidden, dangerous, and tragically real, subscribe and turn on notifications. What forbidden love story should we tell next? Let me know in the comments. Until then, remember, not all love stories have happy endings, but that doesn't make them any less worth telling.